This week, Jeff Mann is out, which means we won't be talking PCI. Okay, maybe a little. Instead, we're going to talk artificial intelligence and compliance part 1. In the compliance news, what does your business need to know about the California Consumer Privacy Act, known as CCPA? Canada data breach tally soar since privacy laws arrived. What you need to know about the US Cloud Act and the UK COPA Act, and more. Security and Compliance Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production. And now, it's the show that bridges the requirements of regulations, compliance, and privacy with those of security. Your trusted source for complying with various mandates, building effective programs, and current compliance news. It's time for Security and Compliance Weekly. Today's organizations face an evolving set of security threats and continually changing compliance requirements. As your business grows, privacy concerns only multiply and add to a dynamic set of priorities. Today's organizations need to integrate risk, security, and privacy into a cohesive program. Online Business Systems team of seasoned security practitioners work closely with you to assess your security posture, policies, procedures, and technologies, providing tailored solutions that are specifically aligned to your business's risk profile and ultimately ensure the protection of your brand. To learn more about Online Business Systems, go to securityweekly.com/online.
Welcome to Security and Compliance Weekly. This is episode number 5, recorded November 5th, 2019. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado. Joining me remotely are my co-hosts, Scott Lyons and Josh Marpet.
Hey Matt, how are you?
Matt?
What's up, guys? So this is the first time we've done like the full thing, like from the get-go, and Jeff's not here to enjoy it.
Well, it's odd that we're recording the 5th episode on November the 5th, right? Isn't there a famous poem about the 5th?
Of November?
Yeah.
Is it Guy Fawkes Day?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh wow, I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it. Well done.
Yeah, you guys are good. I don't ask me about that kind of stuff. That stuff's for my wife, not for me. All right, the new security
trees on the 5th of November. Yeah.
Right. The new Security Weekly website is officially live. Visit securityweekly.com to check out all of our new sorting and filtering capability. Please let us know if you find any issues or have any feedback by sending an email to website@securityweekly.net. This new show will be added to the website, hopefully right after the show. So soon you'll be able to get all these episodes from the new website as well. Also, please help us with our annual listener survey. Use the survey drop-down from the new website and select 2019 listener survey to give us your feedback. We always like to take that feedback and make improvements to the shows and our programming. All right, gentlemen, we're going to talk AI and compliance. Who's going to kick this thing off for us?
You know, AI, Josh, I'll take it for a second. AI and compliance. We can do a lot of shows about AI and compliance. And in fact, I think it's part of our roadmap to split this up, right? So today we want to really discuss what AI and compliance looks like. Right? What does the playing field look like? And then in the upcoming series, we're going to show how AI actually is implemented for compliance. You know, bringing on AI experts, talking about TensorFlow, talking about the different modeling aspects, how it all comes together. It's going to become a very integral part of trying to make compliance simple for companies and corporations.
Sounds interesting. So this is part 1. And so we're going to do some background, I think, on what is AI and ML and what are some of the potential compliance use cases for this, right?
Exactly. We're going to talk about what AI ML means. We're going to talk about what the difference is between artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're going to talk about the different uses that we've seen, thought about, and dreamed up where that can be used in compliance. And actually, Scott and I just presented on that down at a conference in Miami. So that was so much horrible pain going to Florida in the wintertime. And we had a great time there, actually. So we went to a Caribbean gaming conference. It was fascinating. It was the annual Caribbean and America's Gaming Regulation Forum. And GovRisk gave it. It was fascinating to meet with the regulators, government officials, the operators, those are the people that run the casinos and such, and related parties, if you will, from government to commercial. And they really, it's fascinating how they all have to work together. And they were alternately terrified and fascinated by the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and compliance. So it was a lot of fun.
Sounds great. So where do we start, gentlemen? Who's going to start with the definitions of machine learning and artificial intelligence? Because we throw those terms around a lot, but what do they actually mean, and what's the difference between them?
Okay, so the idea is, I mean, when you say artificial intelligence, people think Skynet and Terminator, especially with the new movie, right? And the answer is that that's sort of true. Those Terminators did count as artificial intelligences. However, they're not that close to around the corner. Okay, don't everybody freak out quite yet. The idea is really that artificial intelligence is an aspect of machine learning. Machine learning is a pattern recognition system. So machine learning says, I'm going to take in a huge amount of data, and I'm going to ingest it all, and I'm going to look for patterns in the data, and I'm going to look for correlations. And at the point where the machine can take correlations and turn them into, this is a causation, that's when we start to hit artificial intelligence rather than just machine learning. Does that make sense? I can go a lot deeper.
Yeah, so no, but I think that's a good delineation, right? Is machine learning is looking for patterns and correlation, right? It's looking for that. But when you go to do something about it, you move away from aspects of machine learning into artificial intelligence?
Exactly. That's exactly well said. Well done, sir. That's exactly the difference. It's when you can, any machine properly programmed can look for patterns. It says, well, this always happens before this always happens after this, these always happen together. The patterns are fine. It takes a thinking engine, like a human, to determine that one causes the other is caused by one, whatever. So it's that aspect, and this is a very big simplification, don't get me wrong. But the idea is that when you start determining causation, that's when you start getting into intelligence. You start ascribing meaning to the events, and that's what we're looking for. So you can say that a SIM, a security incident event management tool like Splunk or any of the others out there, those are machine learning systems. They do pattern recognition. They look for patterns and thresholds and such in the data. They're mostly looking for thresholds. They're kind of primitive machine learning, but they are machine learning of a sort. But it takes a human, because we're the intelligence behind the SIM, to say, this is a problem. This pattern that you've realized, SIM, Splunk, logarithm, whatever, is caused by a malicious actor or simply a problem with a machine being turned on and off remotely or whatever. The causation behind it is what we as humans bring to the table. When a machine can bring that to the table, that's when artificial intelligence will be real.
Got it. So what are some of the good examples of use cases, artificial intelligence use cases today? What would be considered AI? I think we have a good understanding of what ML is. What would be a good use case for AI now?
Well, okay, so a use case that's currently being done, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, facial recognition is one that's in very common use around the world. Matter of fact, if you've been to an airport in the last 5 years, in the US at least, when you leave the secure area, you go through a cattle chute, if you'll excuse the expression, where you actually walk person by person, and they'll have turnstiles and doors that automatically open and only allow one person in, et cetera, to make sure that one person at a time is in each chute. That's because as you walk through, there's a camera in front of you, behind you, to your left side, and to your right side, to get a very solid facial recognition enrollment set for you into the database. That's lovely. It's so polite of them to make it convenient, right? I mean, I think it's lovely. But that was sarcasm in case you weren't clear, just checking. And using those facial recognition enrollments to determine movement patterns, to find patterns not just of my movement, but of the people I'm affiliated with and the people they're affiliated with. And this is the classic NSA circle of circle of circle. You know, how many jumps does it take before you're outside of the organization, group of friends, terrorist group, whatever? Is that machine learning? It's pattern recognition? It really is still just machine learning. Artificial intelligence is still kind of in its infancy. We can tell it patterns that we ascribe to malicious actors, but that's the human providing the intelligence, and then giving it a lookup table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, known as supervised learning.
Exactly. I'm trying not to bring too many terminologies in, but if I say that any DNS request that's more than 15,000 in a minute, that's probably either a malicious actor trying to exfiltrate information through DNS, or it's a really screwed up machine. On the one hand, it could be just a malfunction, in which case, all right, just go fix the machine, reimage it, do something with it. On the other hand, it's a malicious actor trying to exfiltrate information. Which is it? We're going to have to examine the packets. We're going to have to take a look at this stuff, and we don't know until we examine it closer. So on the one hand,
you're saying, I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
No, go right ahead, please.
What I was going to say was, what you're pointing towards is the way that pattern recognition is done, right? There's a difference between correlation and causation.
Right. That's exactly it. Actually, I'm gonna. Would it be horrible of me to share a screen?
No, not too bad.
Okay. No, that's not the screen I wanted to share.
Yeah, make sure you share the right one. We don't want to. We don't want to see.
Well, no, the
we don't
problem
want
is
to see.
I've got this monster monitor, so I can share screen, but it's gonna be ugly.
Share a window.
It doesn't allow me to do that. So anyway, okay, fine. Here, you should be able to see my screen now. We'll make you smaller. It's okay, Matt. Don't take it personally. So here is the artificial intelligence and machine learning difference. So germs are the causation of both bad smells and disease. But people before germ theory, the only thing they knew was that bad smells and disease happened around each other. So they thought that bad smells caused disease. They didn't even have the right paradigm, if you will, to pick up on what was the actual causation, which are germs. We had to get germ theory out there in order to figure that out. Does that make sense? So that's the difference between causation and correlation. That's the really simple one. But what I'm just going to show you one more slide. This is the presentation we gave. And I should actually just hit present, I suppose. Whatever. So, slideshow, come on, wakey. And current slide. There we go. Okay, that's better. And these are all the things we thought of that could be used or done with artificial intelligence and machine learning in a casino or regulatory environment. And I think it's kind of interesting. Sorry? Is it that small? Bugger. Hang on a second. Let me not share screen. Let me try and share a window. Teensy bit frustrating. Sorry, guys.
Technology. Gotta love it.
What's that?
Technology. Gotta love it.
Well, it's frustrating because I have a monster screen and it's not letting me share just a window. It's only letting me share the entire screen. So
they have to take over your whole screen.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I have this huge screen, so the text looks tiny because I can't really zoom in that easily.
Command plus.
Yeah, I could do that. All right, fine.
Josh, I think I got it. Hold on one second. Right there. How about that?
There we go. Now we can see it.
Okay, good. So go away. Okay, there we go. So those are the roles that we thought of for AI/ML inside of a casino and a regulatory organization. So for a company, we can track evidence trends, we can monitor departments. Basically, this is turning into a supervisory system. All right, we can see what's going on, we can track things. Think of it as a SIM for compliance. Okay, and we expect that SIM companies will start tracking these things using machine learning, so they're going to branch out from security and go into compliance as well. All they've got to do is extend what they're doing into different realms, if you will. Okay, they're already tracking data. Why not track other data like compliance data? So that's interesting, because could it be that you'll have an extra Splunk module or logarithm module or any of the other SIM modules that'll be compliance? Absolutely, we think. So that's internal to a company on that left top there.
True, and we've seen some aspects of that in the industry, right? I mean, remember, the SIM was driven a lot by compliance. There's people that debate me on this topic, but SIM really took off when log correlation and log management and other things, and some of the early regulatory requirements came into play. And everybody tried to build a set of compliance checks in their SIM and still do that today, but not to the extent I think you're talking about in this example, which is expanded beyond just some of the technical control data. Because from a compliance perspective, yeah, you still have technical controls, but you have management and operational controls, policies, procedures, other things that drive an overall governance policy. Those aren't traditionally capabilities in the SIM. I even spent a little bit of time doing this with Qualys when we built policy compliance module, which was configuration, bringing in some workflow capabilities to collect some non-technical controls, right? So we've seen aspects of the security industry move into pieces of this, and then you have a whole separate industry over on the GRC IRM side that does this more from the questionnaire policy control framework structures on that side.
Great point you raised. What a great point you raised. I'm going to stop you for just a second because I got to address that. So you've got the GRC tools, which are normally tied around the idea of a risk register, and they're normally tied around the idea of an asset list or an asset inventory. So what they do is they tie a risk to an asset. This application has so this application, which is an asset, uses these pieces of data, which are assets, and the risk to that is if we lose this data or get this data breached or whatever, it's going to cost us $1 million a minute. Or if this system goes down, it's going to cost us whatever the e-commerce price is for that, $50 a day, $1,000 a second, whatever it is, right? And they have the questionnaires and the surveys to ask the questions, hey, third-party compliance, are you, a third-party vendor, are you compliant? Here are the things, like the SIG and whatever else, right, from the Santa Fe group. So you've got all this good stuff on the GRC side, which is valid, but it doesn't have the concepts that the SIM vendors have, which is that this is a real-time monitoring engagement or real-time monitoring world, and you need to keep on top of the process as well as the data. So it's a fascinating thing. I'm eagerly awaiting to see when they actually get in their heads to talk to each other. I'm eagerly waiting to see Astendio or Comply Assist talk to Splunk, talk to Logarithm, and say, no, guys, we really should work together. And that's when I think it's going to really mature.
We tried this. So I have a lot of experience in this realm, and we tried this for a while. The problem is most of the GRC solutions are not architected to scale to the amount of data that the Splunks and the Logarithms of the world actually have. A lot of these, these systems were built with an architecture that said, look, I'm going to go out periodically, ask a bunch of questions, get answers, analyze them, and give you some results. What we're talking about is a real-time system that is looking at control state on an ongoing real-time basis and making risk decisions and updates into the overall risk model. And the GRCs weren't built to handle that real-time data flow. I spent almost 2.5 years at RSA trying to get Archer to suck in more than 1 million records into their database. Because when you talk about these tools, we're talking probably billions of records that need to be analyzed and monitored in real time in order to make that concept
over
work.
Again. Yeah.
So I love this concept, right? But what I'm seeing is a disconnect in the technologies. You've got the SIMs doing their ML piece. There's like an artificial intelligence engine that sits on top with compliance and risk around it that hasn't really been built yet in the industry that needs to consume all that data. And I'm not sure that the existing GRC IRM vendors are in an architectural position to do that.
They're not. As far as I know, let's be clear. As far as I know, they're not. So you've got, and you phrased it perfectly. Thank you, Matt. That was beautiful. So I'm actually going to bring this back to security. So I think Paul might pick up on this, or one of the guys from Enterprise Security Weekly or just Security Weekly. Think of pen testing. 10 years ago, it was a point in time. I went in, I collected data by breaking, by analyzing, by looking at stuff, and then I left, and I wrote a report, and here's your report, and I'm done. Goodbye. I'll see you in a year, right? And that's where the GRC tools are right now. Now look at pen testing. We're moving closer and closer and closer to continuous pen testing, continuous scanning, continuous automated this, continuous done that, et cetera, right? And those are where the SIM tools are pulling in, and those types of tools, not just SIMs, are pulling in that data, analyzing it on, as you said, a real-time basis with millions and billions and whatevers of records, and continuously looking for patterns, continuously looking for correlations, right? Am I vaguely correct in following what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, so now we've got this compliance is sort of following security, because we've got these GRC tools, and they're like, we're doing a point-in-time assessment. Oh my God, doesn't that sound familiar and old-fashioned in security? Well, guess what? It's still old-fashioned in compliance. These tools need to step up, and they need to make themselves available to SIM tools as data gatherers or data feeds, if you will. They need to either or build their own. That's fine. I'm good with that. That is a continuous monitoring of all of these different things. Scott, can you pop that back up? That slide?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
The one with the internal to a company, external, regulators, and gaming specific. Because from every different viewpoint, you have different things that a real-time data collection and analysis system, I'm sorry, that's like a SIM, let's be honest, can use to audit and grade your compliance stance. And that includes everything from your evidence, that includes your process and procedures, that includes your staff. Look on the top left, internal to a company. So this is inside of a company, like a casino, or I don't care, like a manufacturer. Where's your auditable repositories of evidence? Is the evidence coming in a proper fashion? Can I link that to my change control? What do you mean? Well, if I add 5 new servers for 5 new applications, do we have onboarding checklists for the servers? Have we used the proper gold image 5 times? I said 5, right? Have we done our task completion? That links your change management with your evidence in your auditable repositories. It's analyzing these different feeds of data from these different silos to make sure that things are being done properly. If I have 4 onboarding checklists, but all 5 systems are registered as up and running, where's the 5th one? Somebody did a custom build. Now, is there a change control ticket for a custom build? That's fine. Is there no change control ticket for a custom build? Alert. Why? Because both security and compliance are going to have problems with that custom server. And we want to make sure that they know about it. This is just as you said, Matt. This is just as you said. This is real-time information that needs to be out there on a continuous basis. Sorry, you brought up wonderful points. I'm really enjoying it. Sorry.
Well, to add to what you were saying about pen testing, let me just step in here. You look at it from one aspect, which is the security side. Now let's look at that at the compliance side, right? We're seeing with the advent of PCI 4.0, and sorry, Matt, we have to talk about this for a second. We're seeing PCI starting to hone in on what it really is coming down to, right? Which means the first PCI 1 is to get everybody on board. PCI 2 and 3 is to start saying this, this part of the compliance goes here, this part goes here, this part goes here. And now we're going to start to see PCI start to hone in on actual protection of systems. So dictating what needs to be looked for in a pen test, how that report needs to be given. And then later in the episode, when we're talking about the news, you're going to start to see, especially in FINRA situations, where auditors are being forced to talk to the board about their high-risk findings, right? Being able to have the pipe of data and the trickle down of AI/ML, right, to be able to give you those high-level targets is really where all of this is headed.
Yeah,
and it's fascinating stuff.
Right, and it's not just internal, right? We can use this for all of our third-party monitoring, which has been a major headache and is still a major headache for organizations because, again, it's a point-in-time assessment. You go out, you say this is a high-risk vendor, you analyze them once a year. Well, what good is that when they're making changes the other 364 days a year? How do you know that the risk profile of that third-party vendor didn't change, right? So there's a lot of use cases where bringing these two capabilities together is a nirvana state, but nobody's built it yet. And then the regulators could use this.
Sorry. The security scorecard and BitSite that are looking at third parties, and they're saying, we're watching them on an ongoing basis. So they're trying. But on the other hand, I don't know that they've got the right mindset. And I'm not saying they're wrong or bad. Please, I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying that the way that they're doing it and the mindset that they have to collect that data, analyze that data, and hand it over to you, display that data, might be not one that compliance can use per se. But let's talk about this just from the other point of view of the regulators. From the regulators, I can use these kinds of systems to determine which ones should I audit, who's being compliant. There's all kinds of ways that these kinds of systems can and should and will be used, and we're not thinking about it well enough in this industry. And I think that's fascinating. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to do their stuff better, well enough that they will not be brought to the attention of the regulators, shall we say. Because, it's sort of like in business, you don't want to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Sort of the same thing in regulation and compliance. You don't want to be on the regulator's dashboard, if you know what I mean.
And to add to what you're saying, Josh, it's almost like risk needs to be calculated at the change control board level, right?
Well,
so when you're doing changes, what's the impact? Because a pen test is just a point in time, are we secure at on February 5th? Are we secure today? Are we secure tomorrow when we implement a new change? Don't know. What kind of risk does that involve into the company? Don't know, right? So when you're talking about AI and ML and trying to tune all of this, risk profiling and risk reports are a major factor of what the AI needs to be able to identify.
It's a fascinating problem. It really is. It's a fascinating problem because you've got all of these different data sources that security, which has been obviously the driver of bringing in intel and data sources, call it threat intelligence, call it whatever you want, I don't care. But they bring in all this data into the system, and we've been getting closer and closer to take data for security and monitor it, analyze it, look for correlation, and think about causation, the humans do, for so long now. But now you've got the fact that compliance is starting to generate so much data as well. As we add more compliance regulations, CCPA, GDPR, PCI, because Jeff Mann isn't here, we have to say PCI at least 5 times. And I think, Scott, you got like 4 or 10 of them. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yep.
And all these different regulations are out there. We're seeing more and more pop up on the state level, on the federal level, on the international level. We've talked about them a dozen times. I'm not going to name all of them, but compliance is going to be creating as much data as security is, if not more. Okay, in some aspects it'll be more, in some aspects it'll be less. Some companies, whatever, you get the idea. They're going to be creating in real time a crud ton of data. That's a technical term. I mean, metric crud ton is the real technical term, but you get the idea. And if we don't analyze that data in the same way that we analyze security data, we are adding risk. And we're adding risk not just to the staff, the management, and the executives, but we're adding risk to the board. When we do that, you will see controls being handed down from the board. That might not be the best way to do it. It might be better to build them from bottom up rather than top down.
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about how, can we still see our cat photos, I mean, if we're not taking a holistic approach to compliance, especially when trying to involve new and emerging tech, I mean, it's all well and good to talk about new and emerging technology like AI and ML. But if you're not doing the basics right now, and you're not looking at the business of doing basics, there's no way that you can actually go forward and say, well, let's use AI, Right now, the unfortunate part is that there is no turnkey solution for it. There is no, let's buy a system and thunk it right into our network, So
effectively, what we're saying is that AI can be incredibly useful. AI, and when I use AI, please, AI, ML are interchangeable. AI and ML can be incredibly useful to compliance, to security, to the overall health and risk management of any company, organization out there. Right now, it can do data collection and data analysis and look for correlations. Causation is still up to the human mind, though. All right? And that's fine. In the future, it's going to be very different and very interesting. And what we're waiting for, at least on this show, is to find a system that will pull in the compliance data and will actually use it for these types of real-time monitoring that we've seen security systems now for the last, 5 or 10 years. How long has Splunk been around? So
yeah,
I think this is going to be interesting.
8, 9, yeah.
8, 9, yeah. I think this is going to be interesting. Matt?
Yeah, I think the use case is the interesting part, is because I've seen this, having been on the GRC side and the security side of this fence. always knew where these systems could come together. The problem was you really almost have to start from scratch. And so you really need to find somebody who wants to go solve this problem, go out and build a highly scalable solution that can ingest this data from the existing security tools, put a layer of control, risk mapping, contextualization at the asset layer on top of it, and be able to build a real-time integrated risk management system, for lack of a better term. That would be really, really interesting to see. And I think the foundations of that technology are there. Just I haven't seen anybody actually start to build it yet.
If anybody does, please let us know. If anybody's seen it or has built it, please let us know. We'd love to hear about it. That would be awesome.
It would
but
be
if
awesome.
not, somebody out there might need an idea and, build it. We'd love to see that too.
Yeah, they might need some expertise. They might know where to come.
Hey, we can talk.
All right, with that, let's conclude this part 1 of AI and compliance. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll cover the compliance news for this week.